Father, we thank you for the time to worship you today and to study your word. We thank you for just the ability to meet together in person with believers who know you. Bless this time that we may glorify you in Jesus' name. Amen. So for those who don't know me, I'm Larry Kleindienst. I'm with Covenant Trust Company. Some of you know me from Windsor Park, where I have an office every week. My goal is to help people with their investments and finances and estate planning process. And Nathan thought it'd be fun if I came over and just kind of did a little educational thing on, I think the title is Money Story, but I'm really going to go over the one that says Financial Wellness, which will include a money story. And you have a packet there. It's just a general information about what Covenant Trust Company does. Your church actually is one of our owners. And so Covenant Trust Company has 3 owners that are all Covenant ministries and charities. The Evangelical Covenant Church, the Covenant Ministries of Benevolence, which owns 18 retirement villages throughout the country, and Windsor Park is one of them. And then North Park University and Seminary, which is a Covenant school and seminary. And so 3 non-for-profit Covenant ministries own a for-profit state-chartered trust company. And our goal is to help people manage money, be good stewards of what God has given them, and help support the charities of the Covenant ministry. So, without any ado, we'll go into financial wellness and just talk about some of this. And we're really a resource to the church, similar to National Covenant Properties and other ministries. I don't think you can see it if I stand over there. So one of the things I do need to say is this is not I don't provide legal or tax advice. We get into those areas, but I am not an attorney or a CPA. So when we talk about money, a lot of people get uncomfortable about this. And so there's some ground rules we like to set down, and there's no fear, no shame, no guilt, no judgment. We're just sharing ideas about money stories that you may be going through. So everyone has a money story. Everyone has a story that they have connected with, what they've been brought up with. Generally, the things that affect your view of money are either people or events. And some of those can bring joy or struggles or work, fear. I had a lady when I was back in New Jersey. She was a client. She lived through the Depression, and that really affected her money story, how she viewed things. She always said to her children, it only costs a little more to go first class. But she could never, ever go first class. She would say one thing, but in her core, the Depression and growing up with very little affected how she worked things. In fact, one of her sons gave her these really nice big towels, because apparently her son must have felt like her towels were getting older and whatnot. Well, she couldn't handle it. She had to cut those towels in half and make 2 towels to spread it out. And so those are events that kind of affect our story when we talk about money and where things are. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of those things. The nice thing about money stories or looking back and how things affect you is that doesn't mean the future has to be that way. We can write a new story and we can write a new path that the old one doesn't necessarily have to be guiding. So this is kind of a little review of wake up for you to think about how things are going in your finances. So at Covenant Trust Company, we're a faith-based company, and we like to talk about money in the realm of God's Word. And the Bible says a lot about money. It says it some 800 times. And we're going to talk about that in the sermon today. But the topic is one that Jesus addresses a lot because it ends up affecting us a lot. And it's something we think about because money is what buys everything else. Are any of you big cooks that would like to have that for dinner?
Not big eaters.
Yeah, that would be a nice dinner to have. So we're really we're going to touch on three topics that most people deal with in money, and that is estate planning, in other words, the leaving of money, financial planning, the area of using that money, and the last one is being stewards, giving back to God. So estate planning, you don't see many U-Hauls behind a hearse, so we can't take it with you. And so therefore, what estate planning does is it guides how you want your assets distributed when you're not here. And the primary tool for that is a will or a trust. And many people in America do not have wills, especially the younger generation. If we include everybody, only 42% of Americans have wills or trusts. That gets a little better when we get to the age that's in this room. You people have more. It goes up to about 50%. But still, it's something that many of us do not have. And some reasons, I don't need one. It'll all work out. I don't want to get started. It's too expensive. And it's uncomfortable. You're talking about you're not going to be here. And so it's a topic that is one that's often avoided, or I'll get around to. Bless you. I met with a young couple the other day. They had been talking about it for 4 years, and they finally like, oh yeah. And so this is really the primary tool that the government uses to distribute money. So I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on this page. Because when stuff passes at death, it's not just the will that determines. You've all seen the movies where, they have the big meeting with the attorney and everybody's present, and there's the reading of the will, and that's, everything's going to be distributed by them. However, there's a process that stuff goes through when assets are distributed. And the first one is by title. So if you own a joint account with your spouse, at your death, that money is just your spouse's. Because they're already an owner on that account. Doesn't matter what the will says. The second way stuff passes is by contract. And that means anything that has a beneficiary on it, IRA, 401k, 403b, retirement accounts, life insurance, annuities, bank accounts with POD, all those are part of the contract when you open that investment, and therefore it has beneficiaries on it, and it goes directly to those individuals. To paint the picture a little clearer, we had a gentleman in Southwest Michigan. He had gotten remarried. He had 5 children. He and his new wife made out a new will with 6 beneficiaries. All his money was in an annuity, 5 beneficiaries. She didn't get anything. How stuff passes is really important. And so it's really important how you make your beneficiaries and how you update them. There will be times when I'll meet people and go, we got the will done, we're all set. But they haven't updated anything else. And so the third way stuff passes is by trust. So if you have a trust document and that trust owns assets, there are beneficiaries in that trust that determine where those assets go. Once all that's done, then it gets down to the will. And the will distributes whatever's left. If you don't have a will, the wonderful state of Illinois has one for you. It's called intestacy laws, and oftentimes that's not exactly what you would want to have happen. Abraham Lincoln is a great picture of our intestacy laws. He did not have a will. And as a result of that, Mary Todd only got 50% of what he had, because the state of Illinois, the intestacy laws are 50% go to the spouse, 50% go to the children. She could have really used that money and then left it to them afterwards, but he did not have a will, and so therefore she only got half of it. So it's a really good idea to be reviewing beneficiaries often. I got an article the other day from one of my colleagues that there's a case going on, I think it's in Minnesota, where a couple had lived together for a while, not married, boyfriend, girlfriend, and he had put her on the beneficiary of his 401k, and now 29 years later, he's 59 and he dies. He's not married, never was married. This ex-girlfriend was still the beneficiary on a $750,000 401k. Will she get the money? Yes. Beneficiaries matter, and many times people take out life insurances and then they don't think about it for 20, oh yeah, I got that policy, I got that policy. When they took it out, they had their parents on because they were young. Their parents are now dead. It has to go through probate because the estate's the benefit. Check your beneficiaries. I guess that's the point of this whole slide. So what do wills do? They do direct what does not have beneficiaries on it and does not have title jointly. It does direct what you want to have happen. This is really important for the one single person or young person in this room. If you have children, this is the only way the court system is going to say who those guardians are. I met with a grandpa over in Sawyer, Michigan. He and his son and his daughter-in-law had come and said, you know, they're taking a trip. 2 little children, you know, dad, mom, if something happens to us, we want you to raise our children. Well, they died in an accident. So the grandpa said, you know what, they told me I want to raise it. Grandma and I want to raise those children. What do you think happened?
Not without a fight.
Her folks said, oh, no, 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 we want to raise the children. So what does the court do? The court has a long, drawn-out process. It takes a year or more to decide who's going to raise the children. If that couple had had a will, inside that will, it would have said, this is who we want to be the guardians. End of story. But they didn't. And so for young people with children, this is why a will is really important, for no other reason than to say, this is who we want to raise our children if we're not here. A will is something that's a one-time deal. It happens when you die. It goes about 9, 10 months to a year, takes everything, distributes it, it's done. A trust, on the other hand, can also settle an estate, but it goes on both sides of death. It can help you today, where you can have a trustee manage stuff and pay bills today, and at your death, it can go on for a long time. It can go on to the youngest beneficiary's death, plus 21 years. And so trusts are a little more different, where it's private, it doesn't go through probate, it avoids probate court, it helps with financial management. This is where you can have a corporate trustee like us. You can name Covenant Trust Company as your trustee, and as a corporate trustee, we can go on and manage this money. Sometimes you'll want to have trust for ongoing stuff that your second marriages. You may want to provide for your spouse, but you may want the money to go to your kids and not their kids. And a trust can do that. A trust can provide for the the spouse after you're gone, and then when she or he is gone, the money goes back to your children because it was never part of the spouse's estate. It was in a trust. It allows control, avoids probate. I talked about some of these things, privacy. It is important who the trustee is. Because in a trust, there are really three primary people in the act of playing out the act of a trust. There's the grantors. They're the ones who set the trust up and fund it. There's the trustee who controls it and carries out the wishes. And then there's the beneficiaries that get the money. Many times, the people who set them up are the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. But those last two, you can leave successors. So if you say, I want a successor trustee, you can point people. If you want successor beneficiaries, if I'm not here, I want it left to these people. And it addresses a lot of that. And so I have people say, we get together and kind of talk about it. I'm going to leave my kids as the trustee. And that's fine. I would ask people most often consider putting a corporate trustee somewhere in that list. Like Covenant Trust Company. Maybe even at the bottom. So that if children, because anytime you put a child as a trustee, you just name them as a parent over the other children. And they're now in control of money and paying bills. And sometimes it's not even the other spouses or the other children, it's spouses. Where conflict can arise when parents are gone. Corporate trustees are fiduciaries. They have to do what's in the best interest of their clients. We don't get any of this money. We just charge a fee. We don't sit at the Thanksgiving table. We just carry out what you want. Many times people that are appointed trustees don't know what they're doing. And they don't read the document, and they don't, and that's really where a good corporate trustee comes in handy. Trustees, you want someone that's longevity, that's going to be around for a while, that has integrity, is impartial and loyal, and knows what they're doing. This is the advertisement. We do this for a living. This is what we do. We do it for a lot of trusts. Finances. Probably the first rule of finances is to have most of this, an emergency account, like somewhere where you can go if there's brakes that need to be put on a car, or tires, or children have an emergency. Having some emergency funds is really a good idea. Insurance, health, life, home insurance, always a good thing to cover your bases. So we really have three overriding investing rules. When you look at the market, now this is kind of an older slide, it's got 2002 on it here. So 2022, this will go down to here and then come back up to here. But overall, all of these at the time seemed drastic things in the market. However, the trend is up. And to be in the market is a great place to keep ahead of inflation and to invest for the future. So the first rule is to invest early, invest often. And this example talks about somebody that starts investing at 25 and they put away $5,000 a year. If they continually do that, they've got a boatload of money when they're 65. This person started at 25 but ended at 35 and didn't add anything more, and they're still ahead of the person that started at 35 and added. Compounding interest is what this young man thought was the eighth wonder of the world. investing is a good thing over time. If you know you need money in the next year, I wouldn't invest that money. That money should be in cash, right where you need it, kind of out of the market. But if you've got more time, the market works really well. The second thing is to be diversified, asset allocation. This is where a lot of growth happens, is when we are diversified. You've heard the thing, don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's really the summarization of what asset allocation is. Difference between stocks and bonds. And this is, does anyone know who invented this? Harry Mankiewicz in 1959 got the Nobel Peace Prize for coming up with what's called the efficient frontier. And so, along the bottom line is risk, volatility, and along this axis is return, rate of return. And so an all bond portfolio kind of gives you a lower return, but actually increases your risk more so than if you added some stock to that portfolio. Adding some stock to the portfolio, which generally is more volatile, actually reduces your risk and increases your rate of return. And the more stock you add, the more return, but now there's more risk to that portfolio. And so out here in an all stock portfolio, the rate of return is higher, but the volatility and rate of risk is higher. And so this is kind of where we look at when we look at managing clients' portfolios, stocks, bonds, and asset allocation. Someone who's younger may have 90% in equity, different types of equity, and only 10% in bonds. Bonds has its place. Every fund is going to have its day in the sun, even bonds. Right now they're so-so. But it's kind of like, I always use the analogy because I love being on the water, a sailboat. So when you have the sail represents stops. It's what makes the boat move. It's exciting. The boat tips over. It's a lot of fun. You're having good moving along. Bonds are like the keel. Kind of keeps us on steady course, and it keeps the boat from tipping over. And bonds are, what they do is they add more stability and less volatility to somebody's portfolio. If you have all one or all the other, it can be a very rough ride, often. Now, someone in their 40s and 50s may have less in equities and a little more in bonds. And, oops, there we go. Someone in their 70s or 80s, it's something that we would sit down and talk about, that potentially, but still having something long-term is a good idea. There we go. Covenant trust, we have different models, really aggressive, conservative, different mixes in between. The third rule we do is get in and stay in. Don't be trying to time the market and get in and get out and get in and out. And this is a topic I'm going to talk about in the sermon, about being anxious. Many people, when it's right here, think, uh-oh, it's going to go all the way down to here, I better get out. And then it doesn't, and then they say, oh, I should get back in. And you just sold when it was low, and by the time you feel comfortable, you're buying when it's high. And it's very hard to do. This is why I have my money at Covenant Trust Company, because I don't watch it. They do. I am prone, because it's my money, to get emotionally involved and make the wrong decision. Versus somebody that's what they do for a living, it's not their money, they do a better job at it than I do. And so we had a fellow who he had managed a financial firm. He called me, one of our clients, and said, oh, this is terrible times, we got to sell it all. I'm like, no, don't do that. It's diversified, we've priced that in, let it stay. He wouldn't. I had him talk to the president, had him talk to the portfolio man. He just couldn't do it. He pulled all the money out. 2 weeks later, he called me and said, Larry, I should have listened to you. Put it back. He actually lost $30,000. And so, getting in and staying in until you need it. I mean, if you need money, pull it out. But that's really the third principle we do. And in the short term, it can be like this, a mess, like all confused and what have you. But in the long term, it doesn't. I mean, everybody looks at that as, oh, well, it always makes money. No, there are times when it doesn't. But having a longer focus can be helpful. And by longer, I really just mean a couple years even. I have people at Windsor Park go, well, how, Larry, I'm 93, how long of a focus do I have? Well, if you don't need the money today, then I'd say you got a longer focus. Does anybody know? Is my battery running down? I think it is. Does anybody know who this is? Well, her name's right here. Brooks Asher. Now that I've told you, does anybody know? Anybody care? Brooks Asher is quite the philanthropist. She sits on the board of the New York, New York Museum of Natural History and the library. And her husband's father was very wealthy and went down on the Titanic. And as a result, her son, or her husband, became very wealthy. And he died shortly after that due to cancer and health issues. As a result, she became very wealthy. And this is her saying here, money is like manure. It's worthless unless you spread it around. And so her whole thing was spreading around her money to charities. I may have to change my battery here. There we go. This is Warren Buffett's. Basically someone sitting under shade trees there because somebody else planted it a while ago. And this is just a Greek proverb that, even a small tree grows to be a mighty trunk. The ideas are giving money to charity and using God's work affects other things down the road to glorify God. There's really a couple ways we like to look at it. One is today, how we give money today, and then how we give in the future. As far as today, there's some creative ways other than just writing a check. You can give appreciated stock. So if someone had left you stock or you bought stock a long time ago, and let's say it's worth $50,000 today, but you only paid $20 for it, there's a $30,000 gain if you sell that stock today. However, if you give that stock to the church actually sells it, they incur no gain, and you incur no gain, and you get a gift of $50,000 that you can deduct on your taxes.
Can't do that.
What's that?
You don't get a tax deduction for an RMD, for an RMD?
We're not talking about R&D. We're just talking about stock that you own individually, not inside an IRA.
Okay.
And so it's like an in-kind transfer where you actually take the certificates and give the certificates to the church. So you didn't actually sell them, you just gave it, and the church then sells them, or charity, whatever the case may be. What you're talking about down here is this IRA qualified charitable distribution, which is the slickest tax break for anyone who's over 70 and a half. Because you can take it out of your IRA, it goes directly to the charity, you don't pay any tax on that, it comes off of your tax return. So you're still going to get a 1099 from wherever your IRA is, saying you took it out But when you file your taxes on line 4A and 4B, that's where you take that off. The beauty of it is it affects your adjusted gross income because it's removed from the front page. And that adjusted gross income is what determines how much you pay in Medicare premiums. So if you have a really large RMD, required minimum distribution, this can actually reduce your Medicare premiums because it takes the money off before it gets to that line. It's also something you can double dip. You can take that and still take the standard deduction, which for a married couple is around $30,000. So you can still get that deduction and you can get that required minimum taken if you give that directly to charity. The problem is you have to be 70 and a half.
It's like gold. I mean,
It is.
I always had to, itemize every deduction. I've never gotten the standard deduction. And now I can give all my money out of my retirement, called an RV, and I can get, the government can do that $30,000 deduction.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
It doesn't really have to be limited to your RMD.
No, it does not.
It can be up to $70,000. No, $100,000, yeah.
So you can't give more than $100,000, but you can go, so let's say your required minimum is $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, but if you wanted to give 20, you can. You can give up to 100 each year. Others, a donor advised fund, that's more of a complicated one, but that's where you actually kind of put money into a donor advised fund, almost like a private little foundation you have, and then you get a big tax deduction when you put that in, and then when you give gifts out of there, it goes to charity, it has to go to charity, and while it's sitting in there, it grows tax-free from that point on. When we look at future things, wills, trusts, beneficiaries on IRAs, this is a great way to lead to charity because your IRA is all taxable to you, to your spouse, to your beneficiaries. Somebody's going to have to pay tax on that, except charity. And so it's nicer to leave regular accounts, trust accounts, life insurance is tax-free to beneficiaries, but IRAs are not. And so maybe do your gifting to charity, to church, out of your IRA. And many people are like, well, I don't have a lot to give. What if I need this money? And that's a very real concern. What if you need more care? What if you need more? If that's the case, then, do what you can, but then leave to the charity out of your IRA because you're not here anymore. So then do your gifting out of that because there is some left now. And it's the nicest tax way for everybody except the IRS. And so everybody gets, the charity gets the full amount. And if you're leaving trust accounts or investment accounts to children, they actually get a step up at your death. So in that example where you had a stock that you bought for $20,000 and it grew to $50,000, at death, there's a step up in the cost basis to $50,000. And so children really don't have a lot of tax gain if you're leaving them, investment accounts. They get a step up with that. And so ask yourself when you're gone, what does your legacy want to be? Where do you want your footprints as other people look? What are they going to see in your life? And so your story, money story, may have some of these words in it. It may not have any. It may have others. Hopefully this is a way of seeing what is your next chapter. How Covenant Trust can help? We help with investments, IRA management, trustee services, estate planning, and gift planning. That's what we do. Oh, here, I should have done it that way. Oh, here's the slide I should have had at the beginning. So here's who owns Covenant Trust Company. Back in 1978, it started as an estate planning council where all we did was help people set up wills and trusts. But in 1989, we said, they became a trust company so we could help a lot more with investments and more bill paying and stuff like that. So that's it. That's all I had today.
Can I give an example? My sister needed to set up a trust for an employee that had worked for her whole life. And she's now at Windsor, and they set up that trust, they'll take care of her, even if my sister's gone. That was the concern, you know, when she's gone, she can't keep supporting this person, anyways, it's just, you provided the trust, you manage it, you do everything, you allow them to get into Windsor, so just how they work and all the creative things you guys do, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. That's what we do. We love doing it. And a good corporate trustee is really good. And that's what Covenant Trust is. Our shareholders, you know, are not demanding more profit. They're non-for-profits. And so they just want us to be healthy and pay our bills and pay our employees. I just get a salary. There's no commissions or when I first started in this business for another company, it was 100% commission. So you had to sell something to get paid. And it's really freeing to be in a company that says just help our people, and I love what I do. So in there, there's information in there if you want.
Anybody have any questions before we break up? We have a few minutes.
I don't know what time it is. We're supposed to.
We're about 22, so 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Any questions? And you're around for a few minutes if you have any private, personal questions you want to ask, so.
Thank you. I appreciate your.
And by the way, you need to hear this stuff over and over again, because it's so, you know, pretty confusing, so every time I hear it, I learn something new.
Yeah, I had one fellow that I met with 4 times, and at the end, he finally said to me, so if you serve as trustee, then you do all this. I'm like, yes, that's what I've been saying. And so, yeah, it is that way. It is a confusing topic because there's a lot of moving parts.
I'm gonna go home and check on all my beneficiaries. I have not thought about that, and I had a friend, single, my English teacher I had, single lady, I'm kind of helping her. So we set up her whole estate, trust and everything, and her investments were all out there. Well, one I didn't realize was an annuity with a beneficiary on it. And we just cashed it in, and I just found out if she had passed away, that money would have gone somewhere that she wasn't part of what she was thinking about, because she hadn't checked her beneficiaries. So I'm gonna go check mine and see who's on any of mine.
Yeah.
I volunteer.
Okay.
I had
This is what the church is all about, helping one another.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment that if you have a trust, you should update it every so often.
Yeah, generally, an attorney will tell you probably 5 to 10 years it needs to be looked at, depending if your life changes drastic. If nothing changes, 10 years is a good time to look at. Because the people you've appointed to serve in those positions may not be here, may be sick, may be overseas, may be, you know, there could be some changes that way.
If you give money from your IRA, like to the church, I speak from experience, you need to remember to attach that letter to your tax thing. Otherwise, your tax advisor has to do a revised
Yeah.
for
So the
you.
one
Because
strain.
it does reduce your,
So,
or
yeah,
goes to
anytime-
gross.
Anytime the IRS gives us a benefit, there's usually a string attached to it. And so with those QCDs, the string that the IRS is attached to that is you have to have a special letter from the charity for each gift that says it came from an IRA, it's part of a QCD, and you did not get any goods or services from that gift. And you have to have that letter dated before you do your taxes. If you don't, and you get audited, chances are real good they're going to disallow that gift. And so that's just a little different than just at the end of the year, you know, everything you gave to church being summarized. That's oftentimes, charities don't get that many times, and they're like, what? And we have to call, but yeah, that's the one issue that is very prevalent in that. So, talking about beneficiaries, I did have to deliver when I was working for that other organization. a claim on a life insurance policy for her husband that died, and I got to her house, only to find out that the lady at the table was not the beneficiary. She was the second wife.
Oh,
He had gotten married first, got the life insurance policy, had the first wife as beneficiary, never thought about checking it, and he got remarried, and stayed the first, and once he's gone, that's it. The insurance company will never change that beneficiary. And so she didn't get any of it. She could have used it, she cried and pleaded, we called, no. It's really important how your beneficiaries are